Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll hear a performance from the NDSU Brass Quintet. But first, our guest now, joining us is Adrienne Larson, professional knitwear and author. And she's here to talk a little bit maybe about her book and the things that she does. But as we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe your background some.
Sure. I'm originally from International Falls. I was born there, and my dad still lives there. And then I moved to Brainerd, and I went to high school there. And I actually learned to knit from my grandma, who lived in International Falls, because I am a fidgety person, and I wanted to fidget like productively, and I've always liked to make stuff. And then my stepdad actually is a knitter, so whenever I got stuck, he could help, which is really nice.
Okay. Well, tell us about your company, Adrienne Larson Designs.
It's mostly just me. Just me making up designs, blankets, hats, sweaters, kind of the whole gamut. I don't do a lot of scarves, but there are a couple scarves in this book. And then I hire a technical editor to do all the editing.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I'm going to ask you, what kind of knitwear do you make? You have a couple of examples here today.
Sure. There's this boot, which is actually felted. So it was huge when it starts up, and you throw it in the wash with hot water and beat it all up. And then it gets about the size, the size of your foot. And this actually has the welting, which is these little ridges, but they are felted. So it has kind of a different kind of look. And then the sweater that I have on is also knit by me, as well as is in the book. And it has the welts right here, as well as on the back. And then it has a little flap, and there's lots of things going on with that.
Yeah, with that said, because now, is this a house shoe, obviously a house shoe? Or,
yeah, just a slipper for inside.
Yeah. How did you get involved with the company? How old's the company, and tell us about the work involved.
I was actually doing summer stock. I was the theatrical stitcher, so I sold stuff to other stuff. And I was working out in New York, not New York City, a little theater, musical theater upstate. And I knew a lot about construction, and I've been knitting for years, and then I just decided that I was going to make something by myself. I was going to make my own patterns, and I started there. And then when I was in grad school in Philadelphia, I went to a Vogue knitting conference, this time in New York City, and they were talking about submitting your designs to magazines. And I thought, I don't have anything to lose. So I did, and miraculously, the first thing that I submitted was accepted, and it went to press, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I've just kind of kept trucking from there.
Now, is this your full-time job?
I do it full-time, more than full-time, but I also work at Prairie Yarns here in Fargo as a salesperson, stocker, and instructor.
Now, you said it's pretty much you, but do you have employees with the company?
They're not really employees. I contract out for a technical editor. I contracted out actually my brother-in-law to help me with the layout of the book, because that's not something I'm super trained in. But that's pretty much it.
Well, with that said, let's talk about your book a little bit. Welts and Waves. So now what is this about?
It's a book of knitting patterns, and they all either have, it's either or both, the welts that I talked about earlier, or short row techniques, which is a way to get shaping without increasing and decreasing stitches. So they're all pretty shaped.
But with that said, is this something a beginner could start with?
I would not recommend it for a beginner. I would recommend at least an intermediate level in knitting before you wanted to tackle any of these designs, because they are pretty difficult.
Okay, but what's been the reaction then to the book so far and your designs?
I am pleasantly surprised with the reaction by people. People seem to really like it. I did a signing event here in Fargo that went really well, so that was exciting. And really the hard part is just getting it out to the wider knitting universe.
Yeah. Now, do you also teach people how to knit?
Yes. I teach at Prairie Yarns. Sometimes beginning to knit, a lot of it is pattern-based, either my own designs, which is great because I can get them to test knit for me. So to make sure that the patterns are correct. And thank you, test knitters. I love you. And those classes are free if you ever want to look on the schedule. And then I do some designs that other people did, just some basic hats, scarves, whatever they need.
Yeah.
And then I do, actually also when I'm working in the store, people bring in problems and I help them with that.
Interesting there. Is this something anyone can do with training as far as the knitting, but then even designing or, yeah?
Knitting, absolutely. Anybody can learn. I learned when I was a little kid. We have 4-year-olds. Like, anybody can do it. Some people are more dexterous to begin with, but yeah, pretty much anybody can do it. Design is a little harder. There's a lot of geometry involved. I never thought I would use it, and now I use it every day. As well as just understanding how garments are made, which was really helpful that I worked in theater before that, because I understood how things fit together, like shape-wise. And you also, you have to have an eye for it, which some people do, some people don't. And there's really, you can train it, but that's kind of innate.
Well, I mean, again, a lot of different questions come to mind, but what's the key to designing something comfortable for a woman to wear?
I think it's one, yarn choice. You don't want it itchy. I'm a super snob when it comes to textures. And then, is it going to cover what you want it to cover? Like, sometimes things are like don't have straps, and I try to think of where the strap should be to cover everything that a woman would want to wear. As well as I really am a big fan of shaping, because women aren't straight, to really accentuate the female curve in everything that I do just shape-wise. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, with that said, as I flip through your book here, you know, we were talking earlier coming on, you do have one male.
I do.
In here with a sweater.
Yes.
So do you make much for men?
Men don't really wear sweaters all that much, as I've noticed. My husband won't. He's too hot all the time, and most guys are just too warm, or they think it's girly, which I think is lame. But the females are knitting, so people want to make stuff for themselves or their daughters. So it's a bigger market for women.
Yeah, and as I look at some of these, I mean, you've got the booties or house shoes, whatever you call these, scarves, headbands, sweaters, purses, even a bowl, I guess. Can you talk about the technique for changing or for all the different things?
Mostly, a lot of designs just come up with, can I make that work?
Really?
Like, I'll think of like a shape or something, and I think, can I do that? Or what happens if the bowl and this were just, what happens if I felt a welt? And then the bowl was, what happens if they're different on different sides? So it's really just curiosity on my part.
Interesting. Where and how do you get your materials?
Some of it I get from yarn companies, which is amazing to get yarn support, because yarn is an investment. And then I also shop quite a bit at the store where I work at Prairie Yarns.
Well, now, you know, how do you market your business? I mean, you're not a big conglomerate company.
That is the hardest part, honestly, of the whole thing. I'm not naturally, look at me, which really this day and age especially is important. There's a lot less support for authors and designers, and you're expected to be a brand on your own, which is a struggle. A lot of social media, a lot of just word of mouth with people that I know and their friends. And I sent some stuff to magazines, so we'll see how that turns out. It's the whole thing.
Well, now, okay, I'm now gonna, are you really working on getting the book out, or do you actually make these items for people to sell?
It's too expensive to make stuff for people because it takes too long. Like, say this sweater would probably take 30 or 40 hours, and what I would have to charge for that, it's just not worth it. I mean, no one's going to pay it. Well, very few. So mostly I sell the patterns, and I submit to magazines, and I put the book out, and as well as individual patterns. So there's lots of different avenues.
Well, as I look at this book here, where do you find your models?
They are all in my family except for one. One of them is me. And then my sisters, Deanna and Jennifer, were very helpful. My sister Jennifer also did all the styling, because I'm not competent at doing hair or makeup, but she really is. And then I used my sister's stepdaughter as a model. She's the only child, and a friend's husband for the male model.
What's the most popular design that you have?
Overall or in the book?
Well, I guess in the
In the
book.
book, according to Ravelry, which is like Facebook for knitters, it's really cool. The most popular one is actually the blanket that looks like a star. I think because I've never seen anything like it before. So that's definitely the most.
And how much time would it take to make something like that?
That is a really difficult question. It depends who you are. Some people knit a lot faster, some people knit a lot slower. And then how much time do you have to devote to knitting? So it would take me, because it's my job, probably 3 days. Someone who can't do it 14 hours a day, probably a couple of weeks to a month or longer, depending upon skill level and time.
Well, I would assume for most people, knitting's a hobby.
Yes.
And maybe a passion. Mm-hmm. But so if they could take on any of these projects, and but depending on how big and how, but anybody could do this if they knew how to knit. Because I see so many colors and designs. And now you said you had a more popular one, maybe that's not in the book?
My first one ever that got published is by far the most popular. It's kind of strange, but cool. Because I look in Ravelry, will say how many people have liked, and that one's way more popular than anything else, and I get royalties off it, which is cool. So that one's by far the most popular.
Well, I didn't even think about, how you made the money on this, because I wondered, so you're getting royalties on your pattern and your design?
Yep, that's for stuff that has already been published in magazines. This I get royalties that sell from Amazon, and then I get a percentage of what sells on the shop, as well as there is an ebook that you can buy if you prefer on Ravelry, as well as all of the individual patterns are also sold. And I have a little mini collections on Ravelry if you want to buy just a few and save a little money that way.
So what's your goals moving forward? What do you hope to do as this business and your company grows?
I would like to keep being able to do it. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of effort, and I would like to finish. I have 3 more books in here, as well as I've started knitting for some of them. I'd like to finish that out.
Tell us about some of these future books that you have. I think you said 3 of them. So.
Yep, there's 3. The next one that comes out, I have all knit except for 1 sweater, and all the patterns are written except for 1, unless I add something. It's about lace. It's called Flutter and Flow, and there will be shawls and sweaters and blankets and all that good stuff again. The one after that, which I'm just starting to knit for now, because I like to have something I'm knitting and something I'm writing, because pattern writing will wear out your brain, and then I just want to sit and do something mindless or something with my hands, so I'll knit the rest of the day, so I have to plan that out. The one that I'm knitting right now is Twists and Twines, and that's about cabling, and that's mostly sweaters, a couple hats, and I think a blanket. And then after that, it's not really named yet. It's tentatively called Colorscapes. It's about double-stranded knitting, which is you knit with literally 2 balls of yarn, and the different color palettes and looks you can get out of the double-stranded. Okay. And that one actually has a couple knit as well, because there originally was only 2 more books, so some things that were in Flutter and Flow have now moved to Colorscapes to really fill out the whole collection.
Well, the materials you're talking about lace, felt, yarn. I mean,
yep.
What other materials do you work with?
Well, it's all things you can do with yarn. This is actually just straight knit it and then you throw it in, and actually patterning for felting is kind of interesting because you can't control everything. And usually I really want to control everything. And with felting, you absolutely can't. And you can't fix it if you screw up, because once it's felted, you're done. So that is an interesting thing. And then lace is just knitting with the little holes. They're called yarn overs.
Okay. Yeah, but you say it's in here. So what comes first, the design in your head, or do you just start knitting and trial and error gets you to places you want to go?
Both. Because sometimes I have a yarn that I really like and I have sort of a vague idea of what I want, and then I work it out just on the needles. I have books of just stitch patterns that I'll flip through to try to find something that is sort of like what I kind of have in my head. And then sometimes I'll have just a complete design that will just be like, oh, that's what it wants to be. Like the star, I was like, got in the car and I was like, oh, a star. And that's just how it happened. So it really depends.
But then, so in your designing, are you the only designer? Or,
Yes.
Yeah. So, I just look at them. It's tremendous, the different ones, and I wish we could show more of them, but people can get information in there. Is there something that is become more popular over the years? People designing fashions like this, or?
I'm not sure about designers, but I know knitting itself is really cyclical, and like little trends within knitting become really popular. Like arm knitting was really popular last year, and people kept coming into the shop and asking for it. And this year it's more the big yarn knitting is really popular, and people come and ask. So it's like little trends and then trends within the yarns, like sometimes tweed or boucle or just the different novelty yarns will become popular or not popular.
So do you work in any other? I mean, people crochet, people cross stitch, people do other things. Is knitting something people do and don't do a lot of the other, or because it's time consuming? It sounds like
a lot of people do a lot of things, just a little. I personally, I know how to sew, I know how to crochet a little, but mostly it's knitting now. But yeah, there's a lot of quilters that come into the shop. There's a lot of crossover there, and people who cook. Apparently, it's just people who like to knit or to make things. There's a lot of crossover between all the different ways you can make things.
Okay. Well, just one last question. There are a couple here. What designs are you looking for? Everything's kind of shirts, headbands, scarves. Are there any interesting designs you have that you're thinking about?
Oh dear, there's so many. Right now I'm working on a submission for a wedding jacket that is pretty cool. I'm excited about it. I'm currently trying to draw all of my the designs for submission, which is always a struggle.
Okay.
That not being my background.
Well, I'll leave it at that because you've got more plans in your head. If people want a copy of your book or they want to find out more information, where can they go? Who can they contact?
Locally, it's sold at Prairie Yarns on University, as well as an open book in Wadena. Or you can visit me on Facebook at Adrienne Larson Designs, or you can find all of my stuff on Ravelry under Adrienne Larson.
Well, this is some beautiful stuff. We thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Stay tuned for more. The mature and refined music of the North Dakota State University Faculty Brass Quintet radiates throughout their entire performance of marches, ballads, and medleys. The wealth of talent in their members contribute to the history of excellence in the NDSU music departments.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Brecky. I'm one of the trumpet players in the NDSU Faculty Brass Quintet. The Bourbon Street Medley is 3 old Dixieland-style tunes from New Orleans. The first being Bourbon Street Parade, and then the second one is Do You Know What It Means to Miss New Orleans? It finishes with When the Saints Go Marching In.
Well, that's all we have for Prairie Pulse this week, and as always, thanks for watching.
Funded by the North Dakota Council on the Arts and by the members of Prairie Public.